So, hello, everybody. This is Self-Worth Talks. I'm Suzanne McCall. I'm a psychotherapist who's really committed to talking to people a lot about self-worth and all the different areas of our life where that's an issue. And today I have Nancy Berger here, who is an expert at this. I wanted to talk a lot about work today, and that's why I have you here, Nancy. You are a workplace communication strategist. Specialist, right?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love talking about this topic.
It's fascinating, I know. So can you just tell us a little bit about like how you came into this field and what it is that brings you to it? What's fascinating to you about it?
Yeah. I don't think I'm unique in this, but many of us who turn to coaching and strategy work and consulting work do it from a heart connected place, from a personal place. And I'm no different in that I spent decades of my life crippled by limiting belief systems, fear-based thoughts, negative, harsh inner dialogue. I mean, it just stopped me in my tracks. I lived, I functioned, but I didn't live the life I wanted to. And I just got really curious about it. Well, maybe 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I got really curious about why that was. And I started to do a lot of research about how we're wired and why we do the things we do and how we get in our own way as humans, and learned a lot from that research, developed strategies with the help of psychotherapists, psychiatrists, different doctors and support system to reframe my thinking. And they worked. And I became committed to helping other people do the same thing, because it's not a great way to live when you're sort of crippled by your own thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. When you're talking about that, it makes me think of the whole philosophy that we think of with 12 step and when you're in recovery, like the white knuckling it. I feel like we white knuckle it through our lives, whether
Yep.
our personal lives or our careers. And we don't even really know that things could be easier, things could feel better.
For sure. And I think if we've learned anything, and we've learned many things from these past few years and the health crisis that we had as a country and the way the work landscape changed, I think we learned that there are so many blurred lines between personal life and work life. And I really have an issue with this whole concept of work-life balance, because I think we bring to work who we are. And if we can better understand how we show up, then our lives are going to be enhanced personally, professionally, every which way. If we can understand ourselves, our wiring, and learn strategies to change things so that we feel better in our skin.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a big shocking change, I think, with the pandemic and people trying to continue working and working in a new way and coming back to work. But again, I think we all hit this tipping point where we couldn't really contain all of that, who we are as a person when we go to work and just keep our work hat on. It just really didn't work anymore.
No, like triggers don't know if you're at work. Triggers trigger you, whether you're at work, online, at the grocery store, in the car wash, at home. And so, I think it's fascinating that people are becoming more aware. And unfortunately, as you and I discussed before we came on, the mental health crisis is real. The struggle is real. It's a part of your health, just like going to the dentist, just like going to the doctor. So I think we're starting to really embrace that more in the workplace. And I think employers and leaders are recognizing how important that is. And it's not an untouchable thing. And the stigma is relaxing a little bit. And that's beautiful. Now the hard work comes of really getting the right help for people and guiding them. And I think your work and my work is centered on that, is helping people understand how they're showing up. So it could be in a meeting, it could be in a review where you're getting feedback. It could be just in a normal workday where you're sitting with your team. But if you don't understand why you're reacting the way you are, then you're liable to behave based on a faulty set of information, of facts, and that
Mhm.
can get really problematic and create stress, more stress, right? We don't need more stress.
No, we really don't. What are some of the typical kinds of problem areas that you're seeing even more now than before in the workplace, like in terms of, triggers and
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of just communication knots, I call them, where people are having trouble either in client-facing situations or internally in team dynamics or in dynamics with management or reports, either way. In self-advocating, taking up space in a professional, measured way, dealing with difficult, sticky, prickly conversations, just how to navigate their own like fear, panic, anxiety before giving a presentation, before going through a review with a manager. The common denominator is inner dialogue. So I often talk about inventory of language, because we have an inventory of language we use when we talk to other people, when we're doing emails, when we're on Slack. But we also have an inventory of language that's internal, how we speak to ourselves. And problems occur when problems are occurring in either of those situations. That's where a lot of my work starts. Okay, what's your inventory of language? Let's figure out what that is and how maybe we can change that.
I love that. Do you find that people are even aware of their inventory of their own language and their self-talk?
No.
Yeah.
The term in psychology of habituation. I mean, we all habituate, it's like when you're used to it and it's just knee jerk,
Exactly.
Why did I do that? Why did I say that? And like any other skill, Suzanne, like playing an instrument, learning a language, whatever, it takes practice. So a lot of what I do is teach strategies and then follow up with practice, because then you get muscle memory. And this is all science, right? You fire different neurons when you use different language. Those neural pathways get stronger and you change your brain. But it takes practice and commitment. And so I'm a good cheerleader.
Yeah.
Practice part.
It's really hard. I mean, I think everybody needs a coach, really.
Yeah.
I had a client who I was talking to about came to me about speaking how he got anxious a lot before speaking. And I said, well, what do you say to yourself? What comes up in your mind before you start talking? And he started going on about, berating himself about how he wasn't going to be good at what he does. And so
then guess what? You're not, right? Yeah.
What you focus on is what you create in that sense.
Exactly. And like people say, well, I'll sometimes guide a client to journal, not because I want them to have this meditative experience. I want them to put words to their thoughts, and then I have them read them, because then they light up both hemispheres of the brain, and then we can work with it. So that all of the things that I'm sure you do as well, are based in this, like, this is the way your brain is wired.
This is science.
It's science, and we're not aware of it because we're experiencing it. It's called, right? Metacognition is very difficult for most of us. We aren't good at noticing our thoughts. We're just good at thinking them and believing them. Yeah. We're not great at noticing them and stepping aside and saying, oh, I'm doing that thing I always do when this thing happens. And then kind of mapping out and understanding why we keep showing up the same way. In fact, one of the tools I use with clients is I have them map out early life experiences in a graphic that I created that looks like a roadmap, and there's road signs, and they put in, the high school audition for the musical that was a calamity. Well, guess what? If you're having trouble standing up in front of your team giving a presentation, this is not a big leap that they are connected. So it can be really helpful for clients to map that out and connect dots and say, oh, then the metacognition starts, then the shift starts.
Do you find that this is any more difficult for people who are like in leadership roles, or just anybody, or what are the specific leadership issues that you see?
This is the curious thing that may come as a surprise to people who are watching or may not. It doesn't matter what your title is, and it doesn't matter what your status is in an organization, everybody's dealing with the same stuff.
Mm.
And the problem that often arises is that further people go up the hierarchy, the more they believe they oughtn't have these struggles.
Right.
They think, well, I've gotten this far, and I'm a Marshall Goldsmith coach, certified coach. So Marshall has this saying, what got you here won't get you there, which I love. Because when people get to a certain level of senior leadership, C-suite, they're like, well, I got this far like this, so it must be okay.
Yeah.
That's when it's critical for you to set aside what you think you should be or how you should be showing up for yourself, and accept how you are showing up for yourself and do the work. Many leaders got really far in their organizations despite their challenges, not because of them. Right. So I think that's the key takeaway here is leaders deal with the same thing everyone else is dealing with. They may have gotten a lot further despite these issues, but once they address them, my goodness, the trajectory can be so much more positive.
Yeah. And I think and especially now when the whole definition of leadership is changing, that yes. It's not like a top-down thing where you have to be perfect and tell everybody what to do. It's very different. They want leaders to be more vulnerable now.
Vulnerable, empathetic. EQ is hugely important, and we have to be very careful. In some leadership circles, it's like, well, is that still a show of strength? It's absolutely a show of strength, and that's where we have to change the narrative. Yeah. EQ, being vulnerable in front of your team, sharing mistakes you've made. You are empowering your team. And what is your job as a leader? To articulate the vision of the organization and then to help guide it toward that vision. So as a leader, if you keep your eye on that ball, then it becomes very clear very quickly that the work needs to be done so that you're able to do that. If something's getting in the way of that, then let's figure out what that is.
Yeah. What do you think about perfectionism? Where do you see that in work?
It's such an impediment to forward movement. Because what is perfectionism? It's really fixed mindset. Carol Dweck's work, right? It's fixed mindset. It's binary. It's I either do it this way or it's all bad. And growth mindset is the key to moving an organization forward and to being an effective leader. And that is being open, curious, learning from the mistakes. Every mistake, is a gift because you're taking a lesson from it. And I'm not trying to be, sappy. It's really true.
I know.
If we look at the change model in organizational psychology, nothing really good happens until there's disruption and then movement forward. So perfectionism just gets in the way of that. And it's rooted in something else that often needs some attention.
Oh yeah. Again, I believe it's one of those things that you have to go back to the mapping you're talking about.
Yes.
Childhood and how did that come out?
Yeah.
And the fears of letting it go.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of resistance from people to
sometimes? Yeah, I do. It's a good question. Sometimes, and it depends on the type of engagement that it is for me. So for instance, if I get hired as an executive coach and I'm working with an individual to change the perception held by their team, say, for example, and that person is extremely resistant to, digging in and doing the work on their sort of inner dialogue mapping, shall we call it? I try to sometimes even stay away from the word fear-based thinking because they can recoil, especially senior leaders. Then they may not be coachable, and the best thing I can do in those situations is not take the engagement because they aren't prepared to do that hard work. Now, in like a team situation or when I'm group coaching, sometimes there's resistance just because people are a little uncomfortable and they're kind of waiting to see if anybody else is going to, really dig in. So I kind of have to evolve I have to adapt to whatever the situation is. But I think by and large, people get uncomfortable with this kind of self-reflection. And so it's all in how it gets presented
Yeah.
And that's where I always go back to the science,
The
because I
science.
think that puts people at ease. It's like, okay, this is real. This isn't just her opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about, like, you're talking about like the self inner dialogue? My experience is there are times when people will say, I wasn't thinking anything. It was more of like a body reaction. How do you address that?
Well, that's completely true and real. And so then they're able to discern between their nervous system, their a visceral nervous system reaction, which, as we know, is fight or flight. You're in your amygdala, your brain's not even working. So there is no cognition in that moment. Right. You're trying to protect yourself from something. So then it may be that we can't talk through this. It may be that other work, deeper work needs to get done, which, Suzanne McCall, is where you come in, because EMDR is such an effective modality for that. But again, it has to be someone who's open to that. And I find, again, if we get back to the science and explain the difference, why you're reacting this way, where it's coming from, we can get people more comfortable. And I often will refer them out to a mental health professional, which I am not, so that they can do the deeper work, which can be life-changing, as I'm sure you can attest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even the more, it's not superficial, but like the idea of how do you get out of your parasympathetic fight or flight, or how do you get into the calming part of your brain and your body, and even just techniques are helpful.
Are so helpful. And I have an online course where I teach reframing, how to reframe thought patterns. And each module of the course, I teach a relaxation technique. Yeah. Because it's critical. It's a havening, you know, all these. The havening technique, it's energy medicine, tapping. It's a tongue relaxation exercise, which always gets a big laugh, but is very effective in calming the parasympathetic nervous system. You can't be in fight or flight when you let your tongue relax in your mouth. You know, breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, all these things. And again, I do get sometimes a little bit of a stink eye, like, what are we doing? But when people do it and they feel the effects, it sort of sets a stage for more learning, you know, because they're in that calm state.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily always have to go way back. They can have that kind of strategy for while they're in the here and now working. And then if they choose, they can go back with, you know, go to do some EMDR therapy or something like that. So if they're ready.
When they're ready, right.
But just to be able to know they're in fight or flight makes such a difference.
Right.
You can be able to frame it that way.
Yes. And you know, I think also, like, I don't know, you're the professional in this. I'm just spitballing, but I really think the whole concept of trauma has evolved also. Oh, you know, The Body Keeps the Score, amazing book. But I think we are getting to a place where the little traumas that we experience in our life, they don't have to be big, violent, awful. They can be something someone says to you, or something that just stays with you. That's, your body is treating it like trauma. And so I think it benefits us to have done that, to look at it a different way, and to try to help people understand how their experiences have affected them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's this whole concept of people pleasing that comes up, where it interferes with a person's ability to communicate effectively.
Totally.
About anything, like in a meeting.
And it's not about people pleasing, really, right? It's about how you feel about yourself.
It's really more about yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always
childhood.
And this apology epidemic. Oh my goodness. Like I'm sorry has become like a filler, and I try to raise awareness around that. Like, why are you apologizing? What do you have to apologize for? If there's a reason to apologize, good, do it. If there isn't, you're knee-jerking to something to assuage some sort of discomfort that you have. Apology is not necessary. So these little things, right?
It's about taking up space.
Yes.
You were saying in the beginning.
Yes. Yes. And I don't know, it's become synonymous with being blustery or being arrogant, or no, nothing could be further from the truth. Advocating, speaking truth with professionalism, with compassion, with respect is a very empowering exercise. Just
Mm.
getting people to do it in role-playing exercises can be
Hmm.
really helpful. I see them sort of change, saying, I would rather, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to pound your fist on the desk and be belligerent. You can take up space and self-advocate in a really productive and respectful way. And then you feel better later, and then you're firing those neurons, and then you do it differently next time, and it just builds on itself.
Yeah, it's that neurons that fire together, wire together. So you do something
Yes.
that feels really great, you feel really good,
Yeah.
and you develop that new neural pathways, and then you do more naturally the next time.
Not exactly.
Yeah. These are really hard things. How do you, like, what do you recommend for people to be able to remember to use these strategies?
Well, there's practicing them, you have to remember how to do it to practice them. So I have a couple of quick strategies that I give people. One of the things I teach is called a word bath exercise. I
Mhm.
actually have people write down like 5 to 10 words that describe their most icky feelings, icky feelings, invisible, less than, whatever it is. And
Mhm.
then I ask them to, for each word, write down the opposite times 20. And then take that list and post it either on their device, have it nearby on their desk, if it's private, and recite those words to themselves twice a day for a week, slowly taking them in, speaking them, hearing them, feeling them in their body, and doing that for a week. And then doing a little, exercise of writing down, how their inner dialogue may have changed. Or these are some of the strategies that I kind of teach that can be used, done quickly. They don't
Mhm.
require like a lot of time, but can be really effective in just noticing how you feel different when you talk to yourself differently by internalizing different descriptors or whatever it is. So that's one exercise that I do teach. Another one that I teach that's super effective and popular is a fear to want exercise, where I have people write down on index cards, on the front of an index card, a limiting or fear-based thought. Like,
Mhm.
I'm afraid I'm going to be stuck in this career for 20 years or whatever
Okay.
it is. And on the back of the same card, to reword it into a want, what they want instead of what they're afraid of. Changes everything neurologically. You can go from fixed mindset to growth mindset,
Ah,
from
I love that.
victim to intention and purpose. Great exercise. I have clients who keep their cards with them. And it can just be a great reminder of how you can choose the thought you want to have and
Mm.
then manifest, based on the
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have like, I've had coaching myself, and it's really interesting that I think they must have done something like that, because I hear myself talking about why I don't want to be hopeful about something,
Right.
you know? And then it's like, it just becomes more real. Like it becomes more like something you can like look at and say, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. 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 It forces you to
Metacognition.
megnacognate. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just
But
more naturally, like if you've written down what your want is, it just makes more sense to go with it rather than go with the fear.
why not? Right. Why not? Why not
What's the
go?
worst thing that's going to happen?
Exactly. And like I do this, I mentor college kids, and I'll do this with them on Zoom, and they sit up when they read their want, they kind of like physically, they sit up a little bit more, they maybe get up off their bed or take their hood down, they're all and it's really powerful. And
Yeah.
in that moment I see this little spark, like, oh, I can choose differently. I can choose to approach my life and my thoughts differently.
Yeah.
And to your point about, when we were talking about getting stuck or, sleepwalking or like stuffing things down, it's just, it's so liberating to know that you have the power, to
Yeah.
make change.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in with companies, if they they have to really be clear that this is a new perspective they're taking, that they're working on it, right? It's a work in progress, and to let people know, like, there's got to be like an open dialogue somehow.
Yeah, and destigmatize it. If a direct report comes into you and says, I just don't know I just don't know how to do this presentation, or I'm scared, or like that, let it be okay. Or
Yeah.
even ask your direct reports. I would love it if you would just take a slot on my calendar and come in and tell me what you're really struggling with this week. Imagine like if that became commonplace.
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
then suddenly, everybody's kind of on a level playing field. The
Hmm.
leader is showing that vulnerability is okay. The
Hmm.
reports are feeling someone has their back. It's just, and I think we're getting there, but it takes some more work, some more
Yeah.
normalization.
Yeah. It's so helpful what you're talking about. And the idea where you said you have a problem with the work-life balance, like keeping it separate. It's not separate. It's really, you have to have it in both places. You have to be there wherever you are.
You
Yeah.
have to be, I mean, long before we had our cats walking across our laptop, on a Zoom meeting. Why it took, I think in some ways, Suzanne, it took this to get us there.
Yeah.
Kids in the background, dogs, birds, FedEx people. And, this is life, man.
Mhm.
This is life. This is
Mhm.
real.
Mhm.
So we're getting a little more real in the workplace, but I think we have a little ways to go.
Yeah.
But I'm encouraged by all of the literature and the studies and the research and how much this is getting covered by different media channels, because I think
Yeah.
it's going to help, help people.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Do you have any last like words of like, I don't know, wisdom about this, or tips for people in terms of what they can do in their own in their own workplace, or
Well, yes, I do. The first thing that I think might be helpful is if you're feeling something, then it's perfectly okay. There's no wrong feeling.
mm,
If the feelings that you're having are leading to thoughts that are problems, that may be leading to actions that are problematic in the workplace, then it's time to deal with the feelings, right? So don't believe everything you think,
okay.
and pay attention to your feelings and honor them. If that means going to your manager and saying, I could use some help, I could use some support, because we know that now companies are really offering a lot of support to employees, ask for the support. Or get some, if you're uncomfortable with that, get some on your own time,
Mhm.
to understand those feelings, but honor them and notice them, and don't stuff them down.
Yeah, but it's great advice. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nancy. It's been great talking with you about this. We
We
could
could
talk
talk for
forever.
3 hours, couldn't
I
we?
know.
Thank you,
We'll
Suzanne.
have to come back again.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a great day. All right.
Thanks, you
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks so much.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.